So hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 Virtual Night Out for Safety and Liberation, hosted by the Southern Orchards Civic Association in partnership with the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. My name is Atticus Garden. I have the privilege to serve as an area commissioner with the City of Columbus Southside Area Commission, representing the wonderful, beautiful, and diverse District 2, or Southern Orchards, the host of today's events. Today we come together not only as a neighborhood, but a city to redefine and reimagine what public safety means for our communities. And before we introduce our first speaker for this session, we ask that you please complete, if possible, either during or after the survey, which we will post in the comments. We also want to ensure that you remain muted during the session until Q&A. Once we start Q&A, you can unmute yourself to ask any questions that you might have. If you have any immediate questions, please place them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that chat, and Stacey can take a look at any questions in the chat as well. We are going to be leaving the session today from 2:15 to 3:15. We'll try to leave somewhere between 15-20 minutes for Q&A. If the off chance you're unable to ask a question due to time restraints, or you don't feel comfortable asking the question over Zoom, or you don't have that option because maybe you're calling in, you can complete the survey, which will also be placed on the Southern Orchards Civic Association Facebook page. If you complete that survey here in this link, that session is that Q&A is or that form is paired with this session. So we'll make sure that Stacey gets your information and your question, and she can follow up with you in the future. We just want to remind you that following this session, we have our next one, which is going to be from what is it? 2:15 to 3:15, 3:30 to 4:30, and that's going to be Kimberly Mason, who's on the Columbus City Schools Safe Schools Working Group. We have Dante Wood Spikes, who is an amazing documentarian, storyteller, and youth organizer. And then we have Rama, who just recently graduated from Whetstone High School and is actually one of the co-chairs on the Columbus Police Department Out of Columbus City Schools campaign. And they're going to be leading that session again from 3:30 to 4:30 right here on this link. And discussing a wide range of topics around school support and youth support. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this session, representing the Columbus Freedom Fund. Stacey Little is one of the co-creators of the Columbus Freedom Fund, now Central Ohio Freedom Fund, which is a Black-led, Black-centered organization that exists to work towards the elimination of cash bail and pretrial detention. They serve communities in Central Ohio by using a revolving fund for bailouts, providing public education, and advocating for radical, systematic transformations which create conditions for a sustainable future. So thank you so much, Stacey, for joining us, and take it away.
Thank you, Atticus. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this. And I guess we kind of like let the cat out the bag. So we haven't officially announced our name change. So we, as of now, we're still Columbus Freedom Fund, but we will be changing our name in the very near future to Central Ohio Freedom Fund, because we do plan to expand outside of Franklin County. And so I'm here today to talk to you all about like what bail looks like in Franklin County, how it works in Franklin County. And as Columbus Freedom Fund, we are fighting to actually end the cash bail system in the state of Ohio, starting with Franklin County. So since we've kind of been in the forefront during the protests and everything, folks have just been asking us like, how does bail even work? Like, what is it? Like, what does it look like? So that's what I'm here to explain to you all today. So how bail works in Franklin County, it's pretty straightforward, but I will break down what it actually is. So what is bail? So when people say bail, they usually mean the money someone has to pay in order to get out of jail. So you can only have a bail set. Bail can only be paid for folks that have not yet been convicted of a crime, meaning folks presumed innocent until guilty. In Ohio, you can be released from jail in 3 ways. You can be released on your own recognizance. which means there's no money involved, but the court might set some type of amount that you will have to owe if you fail to actually show up to court. You can pay a cash bond, which is usually a lot of the ways that in which we pay bail for folks. So you can pay a cash bond. You can pay the full amount of cash surety bond to the court, unless it is a cash surety appearance bond. So what that means is when they put a cash surety bond on someone, that means that you have to pay 10%, and that just quote unquote ensures that someone comes to court. As we found, we give folks total autonomy. We don't force people to go to court. And so we just don't want people to be locked in a cage because they can't afford bail. So with that cash surety appearance, like I said, you pay 10% of the full amount. You will also have to pay fees in addition to the bond amount that you pay or that we pay. If you show up to all of your court dates, we usually get that money back minus the fees. And then you get that money back whether someone is found guilty or not. So as long as someone shows up to their court dates, you will get that money back. So we don't have a special system. We use the same system that anyone else can use. Someone's parent, someone's loved one, or whatever. So we use the same type of system. You can also pay a bondsman. If you pay a bondsman a portion of the bondsman pays the full amount. You do not get that money back from a bondsman, whether you are found guilty or not guilty. So we have seen folks put up their homes. Folks have had to scrape, rob Peter to pay Paul to pay a bondsman. And we as an organization, we try to avoid paying bondsmen because it just kind of like pays into that system of incarceration that way. So who do you actually pay bail to, or who do we actually pay bail to? So there's a couple ways. You can go down to the courthouse. You get the clerk's office, cash or credit card. It's located on the second floor of 375 South House Street. And that clerk office is open 24 hours a day. Now they did change a little bit simply because of the pandemic. So we do have to try to get down there before like 3 o'clock, or you technically have to wait until the next day to bail someone out. We actually go down to Jackson Pike. You can take the money directly to the jail where the person is being held, downtown or Jackson Pike. Pretty much you just need a first name, a last name, and date of birth. That is all the information that we need, and that is all the information that we use. So that is kind of pretty much, like I said, we use the same type of systems that everyone else uses. We don't have a special way to pay folks bail. So who can actually pay bail for someone? Anyone can pay bail for someone who is incarcerated, as long as you have the first, last name, and date of birth. So as an organization, technically, we have used our name to bail folks out. And if they don't show up, we make sure we have the amount of money to cover their bail. So we try to cover ourselves, and just to make sure, like, one of us doesn't, get put in jail because someone that we're trying to help doesn't show up. So we always try to make sure we cover our bases with that. How much is bail? So bail really pretty much depends on what someone's charges are. But before you see a judge, after you're arrested and before you see a judge, you might be able to pay a bail based on a bond schedule. The bond schedule sets an amount of money for each level of an offense. If you have multiple offenses, you will need to pay the cash bail for those offenses. This only applies to misdemeanors, and some misdemeanors like domestic violence are excluded. So there is a different tier system for Ohio residents and based on those who aren't Ohio residents. So for unclassified misdemeanor, that runs about $500. For a first degree misdemeanor, it's about $500. Second degree is $400, third degree is $300, fourth degree is $200, and a minor misdemeanor is $100. If you are a non-Ohio resident, that pretty much almost quadruples. So for a non-Ohio resident, an unclassified misdemeanor could cost someone $2,000. For a first degree, $2,000. For a second degree misdemeanor, $1,500. For third degree, $1,000. For fourth degree, $500, and then a minor misdemeanor could be as low as $100. So if someone has multiple charges under their name, based on what that is, it could be, you can have 4 misdemeanors that can cost anywhere from $2,000, $3,000, or whatever. The judges are supposed to go by bond schedule, but sometimes they do not. And so although I spit all these numbers to you all, a judge can say, I want this person to be, their bond to be $10,000. There's not really much that you can do about that. Sorry, I'm just trying to go through my slides here. All right, so after you see a judge, you should see a judge within 48 hours of being arrested. Well, we found that that does not happen. Usually if someone is arrested on Friday, they won't see a judge until maybe Monday or Tuesday. If someone is arrested on Monday, they may not see a judge maybe to the end of the week, just depending. It's even extra kind of sticky because of the COVID situation. So they don't always get to folks that are arrested right away. It's supposed to be 48 hours, but it doesn't always happen. And what we've seen is folks, can lose their job, lose their children, lose their home, lose their car. So that is a very, very, very tight window for someone's livelihood. Often the amount of a bond increases with the severity of the crime. That just makes sense. That's just how it works. For example, a first-degree felony will likely have a higher bond set than a fifth-degree felony. A judge can also decide to set a bond higher than the bond listed in the bond schedule, which is what I just said. So there's a bond schedule that judges go by, but they don't always go by that particular bond schedule. So the question is then, like, how do judges set bail? So judges are supposed to consider multiple factors when they are setting bail. You can help, folks can help themselves, or family members can help themselves or help their family member with that person's attorney if they have one, by offering information about these factors: the nature and circumstance of the crime charged, whether that person had used or had access to a weapon, weight of the evidence against you, confirmation of your identity, family ties, employment, financial resources, character, mental condition, length of residence in a particular community or their community, jurisdiction over residency, that person's particular record of convictions, and your record of appearance at court proceedings or flight to avoid prosecution. So they determine if someone is a flight risk. So what we see is if a person has like some support, has a really good public defender who actually cares about what's going on, or even a private attorney who actually cares about what's going on, a judge is supposed to take all these factors into consideration before setting someone's bond. What we see sometimes is that does not happen. So whether you are on probation, which is a community control sanction parole, post-release control, or under a court protection order, that also kind of like determines a lot of things too. So what we consider, like ankle monitors and things like that, what is the new word is not incarceration, which is still, policing folks in their communities. So those are, like I said, those are the factors in which are supposed to be considered when posting bail. And so once bail is posted, the usual question is like, well, how long does it take to be released once bail is posted? That can vary. There is no specific time that it takes to bail someone out. We've seen it go from 2 hours to 12. So it all depends on how quickly, first of all, it depends on like what time you get down to the actual the window to pay bail, and then how quickly they get the paperwork over to let the downtown or Jackson Pike know that that bail has been paid for that person or whatever. So like I said, we waited 2 hours up to 12 hours. And so that is pretty much how bail works in Franklin County. Are there any questions? I don't want to just like blurt all that information out and not give anyone to ask a question. No? All right. Silence means keep going. Ms. Tam, I saw you go on mute. Do you have a question?
Thank you for that information, and thank you so much for your hard work around this area. I guess you've explained a lot, like that whole schedule was very helpful. My question around the ending, I know we don't have a lot of control on how judges post and kind of like set those amount, not go by that schedule, what it typically should be for the charges. Is there organizing around how, or even if we can hold judges accountable to sticking to that schedule, or do you know that?
Yeah, well, no, like they're supposed to go by that schedule, but they don't. Some judges do. Some judges are strict by that schedule, and then some are not. But what we find is like what happens is it kind of becomes a little biased sometimes, because if a judge, for instance, what we've seen is we had a young woman who was arrested multiple times for soliciting prostitution. So if a judge is solely like does not like that, is against soliciting, is like that's one of the worst things that a woman could do, they will just set up a bond amount, very, very high. So like I said, like some judges will go by that schedule and some judges will just not. What we try to do is kind of like keep track of those judges who go by that bond schedule, and also try to keep track of the judges who are a little bit lenient, that will kind of give people, a little bit of leeway, like of releasing folks on their own recognizance, or trying to set bail like at a smaller amount or something like that. It just depends on the judge. Sometimes folks luck up and get a pretty good judge, and then some folks don't look up and get one that's pretty like, I don't play any games. So that's kind of the realm. Like no one, it's not even, or they don't operate the same across the board, and that's an issue. But to your point of the whole thing around like ending cash bail, which is what Columbus Freedom Fund, or we will be Central Ohio Freedom Fund, basically what we look at that is like how much money is actually saved from folks being able to be home and prepare for their actual trial. The ACLU had actually dropped some really, really good numbers about that. And so it's like, it's a matter of, folks' livelihoods, folks, lives, and the fact that when bail is set, folks have not been convicted of a crime, so they're not charged, they're not guilty or innocent. They're literally in a cage because they can't afford the amount of what we call ransom money that was put on their head. We've seen them as low as $50. Literally, like people are sitting in jail for weeks, even months, because they simply can't afford $50. Or their next court appearance is set, so it's set months out prior to, and so what we also see is that when people sit in jail, they actually count that as time, and so even if someone has a $50 bond, they sat in jail for 2 months, they still have court costs, right? They still have court fees. They don't knock money off of that. They just they just give you quote unquote time served, but you still have to pay into the system. So it's good to see you, Ms. Tammy.
It's so good to see you. Thank you. And I don't want to hog, me, but one other just kind of to that. Did you notice that during the uprising, I know you guys supported a lot of people in bonding people, leaders of the protests and thank you for that. Did you see where, like I heard, but I don't know if you experienced or saw where the bonds were set higher for people in the protests during the recent uprising?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, like during the uprisings after George Floyd was murdered, like yes, like they were snatching up people left and right, and were literally like giving them felonies. Like they were giving folks like first-degree felonies. It could have been as little as like just snatching your arm away, and someone got like we would assault on a police officer. So it was like we definitely saw an influx of higher charges, during the protest for sure, and we definitely seen the higher levels of charges for Black and brown folks. Like we saw a lot of, don't get twisted, a lot of white folks, a lot of allies were out there, front lines, but they were getting arrested and then they were literally getting out like the same day, or because their bond amounts were very, very low. So, they can call mom or dad to pay $70, compared to, somebody else that was getting a $10,000 charge and had no one to call, or they were letting certain folks out on their own recognizance. So that doesn't take much of anything, so we definitely saw the financial difference and we saw the racial difference as well.
Thank you.
So I think then we let's talk about what it would look like to. I know there's different terms within the criminal justice system that are, we've heard reform, which has been a term in the mainstream for many years, and obviously more recently terms like defund or abolish are terms that have made themselves more into the mainstream within the past few months. I'd love to hear a little bit from you about what this reform would look like. I know there are some national examples, but would love to discuss what that looks like here in Columbus, here throughout Ohio.
Yeah, we don't believe in reform. We believe in transformation and abolishing the system. So we want to actually end cash bail. We don't want to reform it. We don't want any form of cash bail whatsoever. So Columbus Freedom Fund does not believe in reform. And so how we approach the system is basically like, although we are working in this current system that we're working in, right? We know that ending cash bail isn't going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week. It's not going to happen. So we take the approach of like why things happen. I think that's a lot of things that are missed is this root cause of why people commit crime, right? Like, why do people do these type of things? But it's also this thing of, for one, bail does not guarantee someone is going to appear in court. Bail doesn't guarantee the community is going to be safer. It doesn't guarantee anything. And also what we understand with bail, it kind of flips the whole idea of you're innocent until proven guilty on its head, because technically what you're saying is if you're going to hold someone, if they haven't been convicted of anything, then you're holding them for ransom. Simply because if they haven't been convicted of a crime, then what are they there for? They should be able to be home with their family to prepare to come to court for their, whatever their situation is. And so when you take that away, what do? Right? Like I said, like people's livelihoods are at risk. We have seen people lose their jobs within 2 days. We have people lose their children within 2 days, lose their home within 2 days. That 48-hour period, and like I said, could be longer, is very, very detrimental. And then it costs. It costs to keep people, incarcerated. So it's this idea of attacking these private prisons and, all this, it's so many things that go behind this whole ending the cash bail. Like, we're not saying this because it sounds good. We're saying it because it doesn't do our system any good. And we have to understand, like, we have to start to reimagine a system that is actually humanizing folks, not giving folks punitive punishment for, taking a Pepsi, so it's like, we have to start putting a human aspect to the system, which doesn't happen. And bail doesn't do that. Like, you're basically telling someone you're guilty if I'm still locked in a cage with folks who have been convicted. Like, literally, like, we've bailed out folks who have been sitting in jail who are with convicted criminals. You get what I'm saying? I say air quotes, and I do this in air quotes because we also need to redefine what crime is. And so, yeah, like, so we take the approach of like, we try to get, what folks' needs are. A lot of people miss courts because they don't have a ride. They don't have childcare. They are hungry, like they're, so it's like, it's so many things that go into it. So like I said, we take an approach of transformation. We want to transform this system. We don't want to continuously work in this system that doesn't keep us safe. It keeps people wealthy, but it doesn't keep us safe. I hope I answered your question, Atticus. You're on mute. I can't hear you, Atticus. You're on mute.
My bad. I'm supposed to be good at this. My ear close to the ground, so I apologize for outing y'all. But with that being said, I know that y'all are kind of in a transformational stage as an organization, and obviously we're kind of pushed into the limelight, in the past few months, as far as both the work that needed to be done on the ground, and then also kind of what what the future of your organization is in this work to abolish this system. So for those of us who are listening, what ways can we support the work that y'all are doing? I know that there's some active steps we can take, things we could do right now, but then kind of more big picture, what are some ways that we can support this movement to abolish a system that is clearly based on, a system of violence and oppression and racism? What can we do?
Well, I can't speak for the whole organization because all of us have our own different like ideas of what that looks like. But for me personally, I think it's like we have to use our imagination. I think we have to, push the envelope as like far as like wondering what it looks like to just purely do something different. I think a lot of times when it comes to these type of things, like we've been so conditioned to think that certain things make us safe that we actually don't do. You get what I'm saying? So what makes me feel safe is being around my community and being around my friends. You get what I'm saying? Like that's what makes me feel safe. And so I think for other folks, I think it's just a matter of like, for one, you can donate to us. Like we can always use funds because like we do not like we don't get big corporate sponsorship. Like all of our funds have literally been from the community. So like this is really built on the community's back, honestly. But for me, like I said, like I think it's just like I just try to imagine what it would be like for me to like not have to call the police when something happens, right? Like I can, like go to a neighborhood community. Well, I don't know, like it's so many different ways and like all these different things that we can do is just like use your imagination, like use your imagination. That's all I could really say, honestly, at this moment in time, and especially right now when we have the power and the capacity per se to like be more radical in what we're asking out of this particular system right now. I think it's really cute about all the Black Lives Matter painted on the floor and all this other stuff or whatever, but it's really like, what are the real radical changes that you want, and ask for them and demand them. And then whatever that looks like, you work towards that. And then you get with like-minded people and then y'all try to do it together. So I think it's based on people's comfort, like what their comfort level is about it. So I don't know, like that's, like I said, like that's a really difficult question because I think of it in so many different ways that we could do something better, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
To me, I feel like there's no excuses right now. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, to me, I feel like there's no more excuses. Like there's the data that's out there. It's the people who have actual lived experience that are out there. So I feel like there's no excuse for us not to be thinking of something else. Like it's out there to see that this system doesn't work. It doesn't make us safe.
Do you know of any examples? I mean, obviously this system is so rooted, but do you know of any examples in any other cities, at least at the local level, in which the cash bail system has been abolished?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they did out in Philly. I believe Philly no longer has a bail system. I think out in California, they eliminated the bail system. But I think there's like some nuances to it because the thing about it, it's hard to like really use those other places as examples simply because like bail is different everywhere. Like literally like Columbus is different from Cleveland. Cleveland is different from Akron. So, and Philly's bail system, Philly's criminal injustice system is in itself is its own beast, right? So it just really like depends on the climate of that particular place. I think people were shocked that Philly was able to eliminate bail because their system is so harsh. So it's hard to like take things from those places when it's different everywhere, if that makes sense. So I think it's going to look completely different in Columbus and in Ohio than it's going to be in Philly or California or anything like that. And there's tons of bail funds all over the place. Like there's tons of like there's one in Chicago, there's one in Brooklyn, there's one in Louisville, Minneapolis, you know, so it's going to look different for each of those places what ending cash bail looks like.
Does anybody have any other questions? You can either unmute yourself and ask Stacey, or you can place it in the comments. Or anything that you would like her to elaborate on. It is a complex system, and it's intended to be complex because the more complex it is, the harder it is for us to understand it, and therefore the harder it is for us to change it. So don't be afraid to ask any questions. Well, Stacey, I included the donation link in the comments, and we're also going to push it out over. Hey, listen, you know what I mean? Like,
Thank you,
you know,
Atticus.
we're all you know, about the big ask. So we need that money to keep stumping. So thank you, you know, Stacey, for the work that y'all are doing, and for being with us today. I'd love if you wouldn't mind. Tammy had mentioned, and I wanted to touch on that again, because I remember reading, or maybe I was hearing from some folks who work with the fund, that in other cities they were cautious and or realized that they had made a mistake when the recent, you know, uprisings began, because they announced the cash flow that they were receiving, you know, in news articles or press conferences or on social media. And they found that courts were intentionally putting higher bonds, particularly on Black freedom fighters, because they knew that the bail funds would bail those individuals out. So Tammy kind of asked a little bit about this. I'd love if you would not mind elaborating a little bit on that, because I imagine that would make you a little cautious to discuss that, you know, here in Columbus.
Oh yeah, I mean, from the jump, we weren't telling folks how much money was raised. Like we already knew that. That was something that, like, when we first started to organize the bailout, that we were like, we weren't going to tell folks because just to be clear, like we actually started organizing with this back in like 2017. So we were already getting information from other organizations that were doing these bailouts anyway, because we started out doing free Black Mama Day campaign. So we were bailing out Black moms to be home for Mother's Day. And so, but yeah, like we intentionally withheld that information because yes, like once they find out, like they will intentionally set bail very, very high to see if you will pay it. They will set bail, you know, thinking that maybe that is all the funds that you have. Or it's like they will make it very, very difficult for you to pay bail. And so, again, like we've definitely seen that. So we've been very intentional about how much we've told folks that we've raised. We haven't told the community how much we have raised in total for our protection and for the community's protection, simply because, like, if they set someone's bail amount very, very exorbitant, that depletes the fund, and then now what? We have to kind of like start all over, and when we shouldn't have to. So, but yeah, like we intentionally do that. We let the community know that we don't tell information. We have volunteers sign a non-disclosure agreement not to disclose the financial information or our clients' information at all. So that's how serious that we take it. If people want, I saw your question, Ms. Tammy. It depends. Like our direct service is bail. Like that is the direct service that we do, that we provide for folks. When folks are released, we do ask them if they do need anything, and then we try to connect them to other organizations or other things that they could get. For instance, Columbus Food Not Bombs. They give away free food every week. So we tell people about food, not bombs, right? We try to connect people to very local, small like resource places. We've had folks, we've connected folks to mental health services, not through like some of the big organizations, but through like a more smaller like organizations. So like we try to support local as well as, just making sure like folks get the necessary things that they need. If folks need legal help, we do have a huge support from the National Lawyers Guild. And so we try to connect folks if they have legal questions to the National Lawyers Guild. We also have some really dope volunteer lawyers that pick up the phone anytime we call. So there's several different ways, and it just depends on what folks need. So we just try to connect folks to whatever it is that they need. We use our personal networks, our working networks. So because a lot of people that volunteer with us like have full-time jobs, and some of those folks work in places that are very resourceful to the community. So that's how we try to do that. I hope I answered your question, Ms. Tammy.
Yes, Stacey, that was very helpful. So if I was going to share your information or refer a person to the Columbus Freedom Fund, would I just tell them to go to your Facebook page, or how would I tell them to reach out to you?
Yeah, folks can hit us up through our Instagram, our Facebook, our Twitter. We actually have a phone number. So it's 614-502-2727. So folks can give us a call directly if they have any questions. So yeah, like they can contact us. It usually takes us maybe about a day or so to reply back, just depending on what folks need. So folks can get in contact with us through all social media platforms and that phone number.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions? Deborah, I hope Stacey was able to answer your question. You mentioned how can the community be supportive? I heard donating funds. I think obviously, absolutely. I'm sure, some of these funds I know can be, massive.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's number one. And what we'll do is we'll continue posting information from the Columbus Freedom Fund. And as I mentioned, if you fill out the Safety Is survey, if you would like to be added, or you would like the Columbus Freedom Fund to have your information, if you fill out that survey and indicate that you're okay with having, your email added to any, email lists related to the Columbus Freedom Fund, we'll make sure that Stacey gets that information and obviously include you in any information that they send out. Anybody have any other additional questions in regards to cash bail?
I have a quick question. Liz Norris from the Southern Orchards Civic Association. Are there any organizations or studies that you know of that support, the negative impacts of the cash bail that people could reference, like data or research, on like the negative community?
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest with you, ACLU has a really, really good comprehensive like training per se about the cash bail system, about the financial repercussions. So they did if I'm not mistaken, they did a 2-year study about the cash bail system. So I would definitely recommend checking out the work that ACLU has did. Now, to be clear, we don't fully all the way agree with ACLU and their take on the bail bonds industry, but they did some really great research about the bail system. So that is like some of their information, like we do read over a lot. And so also the National Bailout Collective has also some great information about the bail system, just like in general. So yeah, but it's also a lot of it is like the actual experience of bailing people out, that where we get a lot of our, information from, the people that we bail out, and just kind of like, navigating, like sitting at court, right? Like going down to see which clerks are really nice and which clerks are pretty nasty. So a little bit of it is like the actual experience of bailing folks out. Some people are very receptive to us coming down there to Jackson Pike, or the courthouse, and some people are not. So we deal with it either way it go. But it is what it is, But like I said, like ACLU has some great information, and so does the National Bailout Collective.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Well, Stacey, thank you. Really, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you taking some time out of your afternoon to be a part of this. I first attended my first National Night Out for Safety and Liberation in Linden with the People's Justice Project in 2017, and really wanted to bring this to the South Side. So and that was around the time that I first met you and first met the wonderful people who are a part of this community that has been built here in this city around this work. So I'm really grateful for your continued leadership and the work that you're doing this in the community, and to be able to come alongside of you in this work. So thanks for bringing your wisdom and speaking your truth here with us this afternoon. And obviously, as I mentioned, fill out that survey for us if you wouldn't mind. We'll make sure that Stacey gets your information if you'd like for her to have it. You can go to the link that I provided in the chat via PayPal. If you'd like to make a contribution, make sure you follow the Freedom Fund on their Facebook page as they kind of develop and follow the work that they're doing here in this community. Also, this will be uploaded via YouTube starting tomorrow, and will also be placed on our Facebook page. So if there's anybody you feel would be interested in hearing about this information, make sure you send them the YouTube link, and they can listen to it when they have the time to do so. We are going to do a quick 15 minutes, a quick 30 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll end this chat. Hope that you'll join us from 3:30 to 4:30. We have a really remarkable lineup for you of speakers who are going to be discussing in a more of a panel discussion some of the work that's happening in this city around school safety, youth engagement, supporting local schools. We have Dante Woods Spikes, we have Kimberly Mason, and we have Rama. All three of them will be discussing some various aspects of school support, school safety. Kimberly sits on the Columbus City Safe Schools Working Group. Rama is a co-chair on the Columbus Police Department out of Columbus City Schools. Dante Woods is a really remarkable speaker. He's a storyteller, and in the words of Mike Alcock, the chair of Southside Stay here on the South Side, he is a veteran organizer around youth. So really encourage you to come back at 3:30, between 3:30 and 4:30, to listen in right here on the same Zoom link. And Stacey, thanks again. And I hope that all of you have a good afternoon. Hope we'll see you here in a bit. Bye, everyone.